What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. There's a bunch of stuff to talk about, specifically the Nintendo Direct that was announced. By the way, I will be streaming that completely. If you want to come by and watch with me Wednesday, that'd be awesome. I think we'll have some fun and we should see some cool stuff. And today, that's what we're going to get started with. So Nintendo took to Twitter about an hour after yesterday's Newswave went up, which worked out great since I was talking about the rumored Nintendo Direct. So fortunately, they at least waited for me to put Newswave up that morning. And yes, a Nintendo Direct is happening on Wednesday. So tomorrow, it'll be taking place at 3 p.m. Pacific time or 6 p.m. my time, which is 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be 45 minutes long, meaning it's going to be about 15 minutes or so longer than the E3 Nintendo Direct, which is insane. Yeah, 45 minutes, I think, threw a lot of us. I think a lot of us were expecting 15, 20 minutes maybe for Nintendo Direct just to get through some of the release dates for the upcoming winter time, and then maybe we see another one later on, maybe December for the follow-up, like 2018 games. But no, 45 minutes. And they even stressed that there'd be 3DS stuff there, which is interesting. Now, there are some 3DS games coming up, like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga Remake that's coming out. They may even put like a final push for Metroid, although that is out, Friday? So it would be a little odd, although that could be almost like a commercial they work in there. But more than likely, we will see some new stuff for the 3DS, which sounds crazy for some people, obviously, because, well, the Switch is Nintendo's big hot item now. You figure the 3DS takes a bit of a back seat. If I divide it up, though, I would say 10 to 15 minutes on the 3DS, and then the rest of the time, so like 35, 30 minutes, based around the Switch. Now, they also make mention that Mario Odyssey will get some new information. If I take a guess, other than maybe another world that they show us, although I kind of hope they stop showing us worlds because we've seen quite a few. We're getting close to the release date. I think at this point, I would just like to be surprised by some of them. But if I take a guess, we will see something about amiibo support, whether they just show us which amiibos work, introduce new amiibos to us, and really just tell us about the functionality. Now, I know amiibos basically are like a form of downloadable content, but they're not super expensive for what you get with a figurine, and of course, they are used in the game. That is probably the big thing about Mario Odyssey they're going to show us, and then probably some gameplay, maybe a new mechanic or something they've left out. Hard to say about that, but I would say definitely amiibo support will obviously be shown here. And the rest of the show, I would say, are probably like maybe a few reveals. Nothing crazy though, because we're going into winter, so it would have to be ready for Christmas. Now, of course, they do say the upcoming months, so it could push into something like January and February. So there's a chance maybe something is revealed towards the end of the show for next year, early next year, which would be really cool to see. But we need release dates for a lot of stuff. Payday 2 doesn't have a release date. I know that's not a Nintendo property, but still, it's a big game for them. Skyrim badly needs some kind of release date. Of course, I talked about the teaser site went up over the weekend, so yeah, we'll probably see something for Skyrim. Xenoblade 2 is definitely going to get a release date. They'll definitely be showing up because, remember, the Monolith Software, their Twitter account, whoever runs that, retweeted this Direct, which usually means that there is going to be Xenoblade Chronicles 2 there in some fashion. I completely expect a release date around that. And going forward, anything else they can tell us, maybe a Stardew Valley release date. I know it's an indie, but it is big enough to a lot of people to kind of fall in line for this Direct. What I would love to see, and this is pushing it, I know, to see Stardew Valley come out like very soon after the Direct is done, either that week or like right away. How cool would that be if they're like Stardew Valley available now? I know it's probably not going to happen, but that would be a massive thing to have in the Direct. Like seriously, like after this Direct concludes, you can go get Stardew Valley. Here it is. That would be an amazing thing to have. Outside of that, though, it's anyone's guess. New ideas popping up there, whether it's these controllers that we see, special edition controllers, for example, or just games in general. It's always hard to guess new releases or just any kind of reveals. I doubt there's going to be anything about the Virtual Console there. I saw a lot of people ask questions about that, mostly because, well, the Super Nintendo Classic is still coming up, and they don't really want to take any heat off of that product. Honestly, at this point, we probably won't see anything about Virtual Console until early next year, like January. So we're waiting a while. But the Super Nintendo Classic is also in the news today. Let's talk about that real quick. So the Super Nintendo Classic has a lot of people scared right now because we might not be able to get it. I might not be able to get one, and that really hurts me because I would love to do things like take it apart day one and compare it to the NES Classic to see how similar those boards are, obviously give you guys a tour of the system, and just play around with some games, maybe on a live stream at some point. However, I am scared because I was not able to get a pre-order in that I won't be able to get one. But according to Reggie Fils-Aimé, you might not have to actually worry about getting one because there could be quite a bit of stock available when it comes out. So in an interview with Financial Times, Reggie has made mention that they have dramatically increase production on the Super Nintendo Classic, and even went out of his way to urge us, do not spend more money than you would need to, being $79.99 for this product, especially not right now. Don't overbid on it, because it seems like he's alluding that there will be quite a bit of stock, quite a bit, according to him, available at day one, which means we can probably walk in and hopefully, as long as the retailers play nice and sell one per customer, hopefully get plenty of systems in stores for us to each get one. That is my hope. I hope Walmart doesn't just show up and be like, oh guys, everyone's waiting out here. We have 8. Here's 8 tickets. The first 8 get in, and there's like 40 of us in line or something. You know, here's tickets for the first 8 to get in and get a system. I hope that's not the case. And by his comments, I don't think that's going to be the case. What I believe is happening here, the initial stock for pre-orders was very low. I don't think, because it was going online, I have a feeling Nintendo knew that scalpers were going to be picking these things up, right? Resellers that are selling for a lot of money. They're going for $300 on eBay right now. Nintendo probably had an idea this was going to happen, so they limited stock more than likely to retailers in hopes that places even like Toys R Us would not do online pre-orders. They do, and now Nintendo is ready to stock up for what I'm seeing here. Day one, physical stores only at this point. So you're going to see Walmart, you're going to see Best Buys, you're going to see obviously Toys R Us. Toys R Us isn't even doing a midnight release according to them. It's all just you walk in and you get it when we open, that's it. So yeah, go line up at Toys R Us, I guess, still at midnight and wait, because it's going to be a line. But I'm hoping this means that instead of getting 8, most of these places will get like 50 or 60. That is the hope, because I want one, I'm sure you want one, and we don't want to spend more than 80 bucks. We went through this whole thing with NES Classic. I ended up having to spend like 100 bucks, and that was on the low end, because you remember they were going for like 300. I was fortunate to get one at like kind of a decline at the time before it got discontinued, and the person wanted like 250, and I remember I sent him a message like, I'll give you 100 bucks for this, and then like a week later, I guess he couldn't sell it, and he was like, all right, I'll take it. So there you go. It worked out for me to an extent, but I hope we don't get to a point with that Super Nintendo Classic, because it's sought after more with Star Fox 2. Well, to have to spend $300 for it. Hopefully we walk into the stores and it's there, we pick it up, we go home happy. Next up we have Destiny 2. Now, Destiny 2 has been kind of this interesting controversy online, because people look at it and they say it looks like the first one. Others who play it say, hey, it's a lot of fun, they fixed a lot of the story issues, it's a good game. This is what Destiny 1 should have been. And yeah, I agree, it seemed like the first Destiny was almost a beta test with all this DLC and stuff that happened. It put a lot of people off. But Destiny 2 has so far been pretty good for myself and others that I've played with, and it looks like it topped the UK sales chart. And this is where it gets interesting. Despite topping the sales charts with physical media, it still turned in about half of what Destiny 1 sold. Now, I want to point out a few things here for people that are a little confused by this, because, well, Destiny 2 has had 1.2 concurrent users on at any given time, which is pretty impressive. They have recorded that number, and if you remember, PUBG, or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, was touted for being this big achievement on Steam, topping the Steam charts at roughly 1 million concurrent users. So Destiny 2 has more than the most popular game on Steam. That tells me that Destiny 2 has actually sold really well here, and there's a few things you have to take into account. It's only been released on 2 systems, whereas before it was technically released on 4, because remember, it was released on the PS3 and the 360 that had massive install bases at the time. Destiny 2 is released on the PS4 and the Xbox One. The PC is later on, so it doesn't count into these, that have much lower, about half. That's being generous with some of them, because the Xbox One, I have a feeling, is less than half of the 360 at the time. But it didn't have the audience, obviously, that those did, because it had pretty much all 4 systems. I also have a strong feeling that a lot of people bought Destiny 2 digitally, not physically, digitally. A lot of people, I'm sure, preloaded it because the preload went up pretty early on, and they just bought it that way. Because before, I know this isn't even that long ago, but when Destiny 1 launched, digital was definitely not where it is now, where people are preloading and getting their digital games ready to go at midnight. It's much bigger now. We've seen the charts where digital continues to climb over the past couple years since Destiny was out, and a lot of people probably did not buy it physically in the UK. They just downloaded it, and that probably took a lot of retail numbers off. Now, we're still going to have to wait for any type of numbers outside of the UK, charts, NPD charts, for example, so that we can kind of gauge there, or unless Activision decides to put out some kind of press release that says, we topped this many sales, we have to wait. But the good news here is, if you're a Destiny fan, it looks like it's doing well. I'm sure they'll bring out all kinds of cool DLC that you can buy. but at least it's doing well. I'm having a good time with it. It's a lot of fun. And you know what? If you like shooters that are kind of Halo with loot-driven aspects, it's a good time. Although the microtransactions are terrible. I talked about this a while ago, and then everybody else starts talking about it. Yeah, microtransactions in the game, not very good. Oh, and a quick update. Remember how we talked about Virtuos? How it was spotted that there was a job listing for people to be porting games for a Switch. A big AAA game, if you remember that, from Virtuos. There was a developer who talked about it, and it looks like that game has now been outed. It is the LA Noire Port that's going to be going to the Switch, and this was found out online by a few people and then reported. Yes, so that mystery game is just Rockstar pretty much outsourcing to Virtuos to have LA Noire be ported to the Nintendo Switch, more than likely because they are working on the PS4 and the Xbox One version internally, and they just wanted to have that pretty much outsourced out to another company. It's Virtuos. And our last bit of news, it looks like the Switch is certainly the indie pushing machine. This is being reported by several indie developers saying that the Switch version for them have sold way better than any other version. It's gone out on record now that the developers of Wonder Boy said that Wonder Boy and the Switch sold more than all other systems combined. Yes, that's right, all of them combined. Forma 8 came out and said the Switch version is the best-selling version when you don't compare it to the iOS version, which sold cheaper and has a much larger install base, which tells me that the Switch has a massive attach rate for indie games right now, which is great. We saw Death Squared, for example, come out and say that the Switch version destroyed the Steam sales. Like, Steam and Switch launched, but the Switch version outsold the Steam version by a mile, according to them. They had the funny visual online on Twitter where they have Ralph from The Simpsons saying "Go banana," talking about Steam sales, but the Switch sales went really well. And if you're an indie game fan, this should really excite you, because that means that, well, a lot of these companies go where the money is, as we talked about, because there's lower risk. And despite the Switch's really lower install base right now, the attach rate is so high, you're going to see this a lot now. You're going to see a lot of indie game developers really go to the Switch, develop for the Switch. You may even see, well, some developers just put their game on the Switch. Not even on Steam, which sounds crazy, right? But we see it with Super Meat Boy. The new Super Meat Boy coming over is going to be a timed exclusive on the Switch. It's going to launch on the Switch first, and then on other systems later. And I don't think that's a bad idea, to be honest, because the Switch is hot right now. People are buying these games because the Switch gives us that portable nature, and some of these indie games, I completely understand why you may not fire it up on your 65-inch TV, and you may be more inclined to fire it up with something like the Switch that's portable and you're not stuck to your TV with. Now, I'm not saying everyone, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who would play some of these games on the PS4, but keep in mind, that audience is a little different than the audience even on the Switch at this point. The Switch is doing so well for indie games, and if you're a fan of indie games, get excited, because you're going to see quite a few ports and even original ideas specifically for the Switch. It's a fun time right now to be a gamer, especially if you have all the systems, but definitely if you have a Switch. That's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me think about any of the stuff we talked about today. Whether it is this Nintendo Direct, it's going to be 45 minutes long, which is that's about twice as long, more than twice as long than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a 20-minute Direct if we did actually see the Direct, which is real. I did not think it'd be 45 minutes long. So let me know what you guys think we're going to see. Any big surprise announcements? I mean, Rocket League kind of came out of nowhere at E3. Now, this isn't E3, obviously, but Nintendo Directs bring surprises pretty much consistently, and it's 45 minutes. They got to fill that 45 minutes. Also, let me know what you think about the Super Nintendo Classic. Do you think Reggie is kind of pushing a PR statement here? Or do you think Nintendo learned their lesson in the NES Classic and they know that they can still produce a ton of these systems and it would still be in demand? Seriously, if they pushed 5 million units in the first month, so like September 29th to October 29th, it would still be in demand in October and then November. It just would be. People want this system. It's cheap, and everybody remembers those Super Nintendo games, so bring the units, Nintendo, because we're probably all going to be buying them. That's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.